right, here we go. We are bringing you more Iam Tongi reactions. Today, we are reacting to What a Wonderful World. I'm not sure which version he's going to be singing.
I'm
excited to find out.
No, I'm guessing he's doing the Iam Tongi version.
Oh, I didn't think of that.
Nailed it. Okay, let's get right into it.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I watch them bloom for me and...
Okay, first off, he sounds incredible. But that shot at Katy Perry where it kind of looked like you're looking at a keyhole through her felt really creepy. Why am I staring at Katy Perry's face through a keyhole here? This is kind of odd.
Here I'm like thinking about the vocal comparison between him and Iz and Louis Armstrong and all these guys, and you're just like, do we have to keep peeping at the people like this? It's kind of weird. You're like, this brings up too many memories. Too many memories. No, so one of the things I noticed, going back to Iam Tongi and stepping away from your past a little bit, is his voice has a more raspy, more airy quality than Iz does.
Absolutely does.
It does have that. It's that same kind of Polynesian voice, Polynesian method, right? But it's a little bit more clean, is what probably the word we would use for that. It's a little more clean. And of course, you have Louis Armstrong. And that's
his voice
different
is
story
clean.
altogether.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? All beautiful, beautiful musicians. So, but this definitely sounds different.
Yeah, and it's a higher tone than I expected him to come in at.
Yeah, and we're only like
that makes sense with his voice.
5 seconds into it, 30 seconds.
That's why I said come in at, not like
wow.
like sing the whole song.
It felt like 5 seconds, but then we just ended up talking about your fantasy life, real life. Anyway, let's carry on.
And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, bright blessed days and dark sacred nights. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the...
So I noticed a couple things here. He's playing the ukulele instead of a guitar.
I didn't notice that, actually. I should have, but I didn't.
It's smaller. So
I was not paying attention, obviously.
I was thinking about the guitar because I was watching a Polynesian comedian last night, and he was talking. He's like, "Why did the biggest people in the world play the smallest guitar?" Anyway, so I was just thinking about that, and then I was like, his guitar is even smaller. So I noticed that he's playing the ukulele, which I haven't seen him play that before.
I haven't, no.
But
he always has his guitar his dad gave him.
And one thing I'll say is that he is singing this version slower than the other musicians have done theirs, who are famous for this song. And
you're right. I hadn't, again, something I didn't notice, but you're right.
Yes, so it's a little bit slower, which I think gives it a little bit more emotional impact.
A little more time for it
So
to say
it's more reflective. It's not just more emotional impact, it's more reflective. So when you look at like Louis Armstrong and you look at Iz, right? Their versions are upbeat and like
observational?
Yeah, but it's more like yeah, you know? And his is more like you know. That's what it's like. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I think a lot of it that adds that effect is the fact that at the end of each key note, he's actually trailing off the note into a whisper, which I really like. Right. It gives it a very dreamlike quality. Like you close your eyes and you're not, where I say observant, talking about Brother Iz and Louis Armstrong's versions, compared to this one, it feels more like you're closing your eyes and you're imagining this wonderful world,
right.
Not so much being in it and directly observing it.
Or dreaming into it, kind of thing.
Yes, yeah. Yes, it's different enough that it really strikes its own message.
Yeah, I like that. It has more. It's just a different feel. It's a different feel. I'm excited to see where it turns. But I think also if you look at it from terms of like understanding his story, right? Now, if you just hear it, of course, you can pick up on some of these things that we're talking about. But when you also take into account his story that he shared in his audition and since, it takes on a new meaning, right? It's not just like hey, sad. It's not just like, hey, upbeat, happy song, but it's like, hey, we can find, bluebirds singing and clouds and all these good things. What a wonderful world. We can find that after a grieving process. And that is a beautiful thing. And I think that it'll add something to this song that we maybe didn't get to experience in previous iterations that we've heard from this song.
Yeah.
Rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people passing by. I hear friends shaking hands saying, how do you do?
So his arrangement was different there as well in that part, which I like. I like when people take an original song and they cover it, and if it's just the same song, there's nothing different and unique about it.
Yeah.
But here, and especially since the person most famous for singing this, aside from Louis Armstrong, is right?
Yeah.
Who's already Polynesian. So there's a bit of a barrier or something to overcome
in making it your own.
Trying to make it your own, right?
Yeah.
Because it's kind of like, well, am I going to just be copying the same? Is this just going to be a reiteration of the same thing? But this was a different version. And I like how he rearranged some of that stuff. Of course, we talked about like the longer phrases and things like that. But when you actually change up the notes but keep it all in there, I don't know. It's his song now.
Yeah.
And that's when you're making a cover. I think that's an important thing to do, is to make it your song.
Yeah.
Shaking hands saying, how do you do? They're really sad. I love you. I hear babies cry and I watch them grow. They'll know much more than we'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
Beautiful performance.
Let me.
Oh,
I had to let the last note happen.
So one of the things I noticed too, if we're comparing this just with some of the other versions, so with and I hate to do just so much comparison, but how can you not with this song, right?
Yeah.
With Iz's version, it comes up much higher into that crystal head voice, into that like very clear, very high register. Iam keeps it in a range that is safe and comfortable for him. I mean, he's pushing some of those high notes, but it's in a way that is like he's showcasing his voice without trying to overdo it or push something that he's not comfortable with.
Yeah.
And I think that that's good because it also sets it up for him, but then it also helps it be safe and original to him and everything like that. And I think that that's important when you're doing a song. Now it's good to like push and find these new spaces and stuff, but especially in a competition, you only want to push it so far, otherwise you're gonna be like, But Iz had a much, he played in that much higher register, much more, Well, and this one just has that almost a ghostly, like almost a soft. Ghost isn't the right word. Almost
ethereal?
Ethereal, yes, thank you. An ethereal kind of feel to it, much more than the other ones, which you said, which had a much more vivid feel to it. Yeah.
I liked how it didn't feel like either of the most popularized renditions of this song.
Yeah.
So it started, I think, with more of a slowed down but Louis Armstrong tone to it. You could tell he was getting into a little bit of his rasp in his voice in a way that lightly mimics Louis Armstrong. But then he switched, and it went higher upbeat when he went into the second verse, and it got more of a, hey, the world is a happy place. And I really took especially meaning, like for myself, when he did that, talking about you hear babies cry, and that's when he started getting upbeat. And it was like new life is what brings the joy back, especially when you think about it in the story of his grieving process. But children being born, new life arriving, that's part of what makes this world so beautiful and helps us stay happy despite the grief that happens at the end of life. Then there's also the aspect that in that upbeat tone, he started to go into Iz's version, which goes off on its own complete verse that doesn't exist in the Louis Armstrong version. He went into those notes.
Songs,
yeah, so he kind of fused the two versions. I was wondering like which version it would be more like, and it's not really more like either or. It's he kind of fused the two together and just made his own version on top of that. I really like it. It came together beautifully.
And I would agree, like it's not just a fusion of the two versions.
Yes.
This is a third version of the song. And so that's great. It was very at some parts I felt like there was a little bit too much airiness or too much whisper.
Okay.
But on the line, do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It was like pushing the envelope, not going past the line.
Like I think if I was to listen to an album of his, I would want that like for this song, but I wouldn't want that carried into like every song that he sings.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? To
Makes
that
sense.
degree. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But like for one song, to give it that ethereal effect, to give it that kind of not blurry, but just hard to grasp effect, I think it worked beautifully. Yeah.
Well done, Ian.
Like, great kid, man. Great kid. This kid's like a teenager.
I know.
He's a kid, man.
I sometimes sit there and just wonder, like, what it would be like to be a regular teenager, not really well known. It seems like he was kind of a quiet to himself guy, you know, as much as Polynesians are, but kind of a quiet to himself
Whoa,
guy.
racist much?
No, they're just such a warm people. And then and then all of a sudden he gets famous, like famous out of nowhere.
Like, and I'm thinking too, when I was thinking this about halfway through when we were watching this, he's probably thinking like, whoa.
Am I in a dream? Is this real?
Is this actually happening right now? Am I actually singing this song on this stage right now? Like, this is wild. You know?
And people in our comments have been comparing him to Iz.
Yeah.
Which is unsurprising. A lot of people are commenting, kind of seeing if he will become kind of the successor to Iz, as in that, like, truly Polynesian famous singer, right? That kind of breaks into the mainstream globally, not just in the Polynesian culture sphere. And they want a good representative of their culture, and a lot of people feel like Iam can be that, which is cool to see. We're seeing a lot of that in our comment section, and it's great. Yeah. So keep it up, Iam. It's awesome.
I'm loving this journey. Thanks for taking us along. And for all of you who recommended that we check out Iam, thanks for that, because we're going to keep going. So subscribe and stay tuned.